If you have struggled to control your anger, stick around because I'm going to share with you 11 tips to take back control of your anger. Hey everyone, I'm Cody Mitz. I'm a licensed professional counselor and I specialize in anger management counseling. And today I'm going to share 11 tips to taking control of your anger. So let's dive right in. Tip number 1 is learn to recognize your anger. So what I mean by this is learn to understand that anger is not typically an on or off emotion. I have another video on this topic which you can watch by clicking on this box. So one of the analogies I like to use is think of if you wanted to go learn a new sport like baseball. You can't just walk out one day on the field with no practice, no experience, and think that you're going to be great at playing baseball. You got to learn the skills. You got to get out there and practice. You got to learn how to throw. You got to learn how to hit the ball. So you have to do a lot of practice and preparation in order to be good. And the same thing is true if you're struggling with anger, is you have to practice if you really want to be good at it. If you're waiting until your anger is at a really extreme level, till you're in a rage or until you're furious, it's going to be really difficult. It's going to take a lot of work, and there's a lot less that you can do if you let your anger get that high. Tip number 2 is do something to increase your positive emotions. So a lot of times we focus on how do I stop this bad emotion, which is good, it's a part of the work, but I think it's easy to forget that we also want to learn how do I increase a good emotion. Because I think ultimately that's what we want. We want to feel good, we want to feel happy. So do things that make you laugh. Do things that you enjoy. A big one that I always suggest to people that I'm working with is get outside. There is research, there are studies that have found that being outside reduces people's stress level just by spending times outdoors, being in nature. So if you're at home, if you're at the office, just take a break, go outside for 5 or 10 minutes. If there's a park near your house, spend some time doing something outdoors. But if you can't get outdoors, do something that you enjoy. Do something to increase positive emotions. For me, I like gardening, so go outside. Spending time in the garden just makes me feel good. It reduces my stress levels. So find what it is that you like, find what it is that you enjoy, so that you can increase those positive emotions and those positive feelings, and it's going to be a lot harder for you to struggle with anger if you're feeling good. Tip number 3 is practice some breathing techniques or breathing skills. Now you may have heard this one before, and it's more than just take a deep breath. Practice this ahead of time so that you're good at it when you need it. So a breathing skill is important because our breath really controls or regulates how we feel. So if you're angry or upset or even stressed or anxious, you'll probably notice your breathing changes. Some ways that you can do that, one is called square breathing. So if you just think of a square, where in the top corner of the square, you're taking a deep breath in, you're holding it for 4 seconds, you exhale slowly for 4 seconds, and then you pause for 4 seconds. So that little technique right there is one great way that you can start practicing how to control your breathing so that when you're in the midst of feeling really angry, you have one little tool that you can use to calm yourself down. Tip number 4 is get some exercise. So you've probably heard this one before as well. But exercise is so important to just feeling good and again, regulating how we feel. Exercise is super important because it releases good hormones. So when we're stressed, our body releases certain hormones. One of them is called cortisol. And when you exercise, when you're doing something physically active, your body is releasing other hormones to counteract or to kind of fight off those stressful hormones that make you feel bad. So it's really important that you're doing something physical. Now that could be anything from just going for a walk, doing something that you enjoy. So if you like to run, if you like to swim, If you like to ride your bike, just get your body moving, get those good hormones, and just release that energy and that tension that can live in your body when you feel angry. Now, one thing I want to caution here is using a punching bag. So that's a question that I get asked a lot is, if I'm angry, should I go hit a punching bag to let out my anger? And I would say it kind of depends. If you're going to use a punching bag and you're just focusing on the person or the thing that makes you angry while you're hitting that bag, you're probably not really helping yourself, and you might actually be making things worse. If you can use a punching bag without feeling angry, without focusing on the thing that you're upset about, I would say that a punching bag isn't necessarily a bad idea. I would just use caution, and if possible, maybe find some other ways that you can get exercise in if you're worried that that might be a problem for you. Tip number 5 is don't be afraid to ask for help from a professional. So if your anger is getting to a point where it's becoming destructive, if it's becoming violent, if you're getting aggressive, or if you just really can't seem to move past this problem with anger, even though you've tried to work on it, you might need to actually reach out for some professional help. So there are anger management counselors like myself who specialize in helping people work on anger. There are support groups out there. So there's a number of resources to help you learn how to deal with this problem if you can't seem to overcome it on your own. There's a lot of fear for some people about going to an anger management group or talking to an anger management therapist, sometimes because of the belief that anger management is only for court-ordered people, or it's only for someone that's forced into doing counseling. And that is not true. There are a lot of people who just struggle with this emotion and realize that they need help, because a lot of people wait until it's too late. I have people come into my office all the time and they're experiencing a lot of problems at home. They're going through a divorce. They're having some major problems with their family. And typically we wait until it's too late, until things are so extreme that then it's really hard to get back to a good, healthy place. So don't wait till you're in that extreme place, and don't be afraid to ask for a little extra support. Tip number 6 is to avoid drugs and alcohol if you struggle with your anger. This could be a real risk if you tend to stuff your anger or if you tend to stuff your emotions, because what happens is you stuff that anger in and you hold it in and you don't want to let it out. But if you drink more than you should, then that lowers that filter. And so you start saying things or you start doing things that you wouldn't normally say or do, and it can really get you into a lot of trouble. A lot of times the people who come to me with legal problems because of their anger, typically oftentimes there's some type of alcohol or drug involved in those types of situations. The question I get asked a lot is about marijuana. The common belief is that marijuana is going to relax you, it's going to calm you down. You're relying on something to control how you feel. And that becomes a problem because sometimes you may not be able to go take that smoke break. Or if you're at work, you probably can't drink alcohol. So you need to learn how to regulate and how to deal with this emotion without using or without relying on a substance. Tip number 7 is don't stuff your anger. So a problem that you might be experiencing is that you tend to hold back your emotion. And then you have these little explosions, or sometimes big explosions. So stuffing your anger is actually going to be a negative thing. You want to learn how to process or talk about things that have upset you or that frustrate you, and you want to be able to do that without stuffing it, without holding it in all the time. One way that you can do this at home is you can start an anger journal. One of the things that I do with people that I'm working with is what's called an anger log, and you're just learning to kind of document things that are happening when you're getting angry, basically so that you can study your anger, so that you can start to kind of see what are the patterns, what are the things that always set me off. And also an anger journal is helpful because it gives you a space to just write down and process what you're thinking and what you're feeling. Sometimes you may not want to do that out loud with another person, so if you like to write, Starting an anger journal is one great way to prevent yourself from stuffing your anger. Tip number 8 is change your surroundings. So if you're having a fight, if you're getting really upset, it's important that you change the surroundings. So that could be something just as simple as going outside. I tell people all the time, if you're having a fight, say maybe you're fighting with your spouse, take a walk. Just get outside, change settings, because just being in a different environment is probably going to help you reduce your anger. If you need to just go to another room, even that can be helpful, because if you're in the same environment, it's going to be harder to control, or it's going to be harder to regulate yourself. But just changing your surroundings, changing the people that you're around, again, getting outside, getting fresh air is such a helpful way to learn how to just reduce your anger when it's really getting stuck or getting to a place where you can't seem to control it. Tip number 9 is learn how to distract yourself in a healthy way. So distracting yourself can be something just as simple as if you're having a fight, if your anger is getting really high, do something like listen to music. Step into the next room, put on some headphones, do something to take your mind off of what's making you angry is the whole point of distracting yourself. So you could listen to music, you could try and go read a book, you can go sit in another room and you can meditate, but you want to do something that takes your mind off of the thing that makes you angry. Because if you just stew on what you're upset about, if you just think about the person who you're angry with and what they said and how they made you angry and what they did wrong, you're just going to keep yourself getting more and more worked up. So distraction is just about taking your mind off of the thing that you're angry at and focusing it on something else. And now this is a temporary solution because you're just trying to get your emotions to come down. So after your emotions go down, after your anger level comes back to a healthier place, it's important that you do deal with it, that you deal with the conflict when your emotions aren't too high. So think of distraction as a temporary thing, but you want to be careful that you don't distract yourself and never come back and deal with the problem, because that can easily turn into stuffing anger. Tip number 10 is practice empathy. Now, this one is going to take a little bit more practice or probably a little bit more time. And I say that because it can be very difficult to practice empathy when you're angry and when you're upset. Try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So basically, you're trying to change your thinking and you're trying to take a different perspective. So you want to try and understand the situation, understand the conflict from a different point of view so that you can start to maybe change your emotion. Because if you can take the other person's point of view, you might realize, okay, here's where we're getting stuck, or here's why we can't seem to get past this problem. Emotional empathy is, can I feel what that other person is feeling? So it's not just can I change my perspective, but can I actually try and feel what that other person is feeling? So learning to do this is going to be a really helpful tool so that you can lower your anger, and it's great if you're struggling with conflict. Empathy is a really important skill if you're trying to work through conflict in a healthy way. Tip number 11 is practice forgiveness. Now this, like empathy, is going to be one that's probably going to take a little bit more work and it's going to take a little bit more practice, but it's going to be huge for a lot of people if you're struggling with anger. So learn to practice forgiveness, which is essentially learning to let things go. If you hold on to grudges, if you just can't seem to let things go, or if you have resentments, that's a good indicator that you probably need to learn how to forgive things. One of the problems that gets people stuck is assuming that forgiveness is about the other person. But we need to shift that and start to realize that forgiveness is really about you. It's not about the other person. It's about dealing with your emotions and your ability to let something go so that you don't hold a grudge, so that you don't build resentment, because that's where anger just builds and builds and it becomes a really big problem. Now, I would love to hear from you. So if there are some other skills or some other tools that have worked for you or that you know of, leave some ideas in the comments down below, and let the rest of us know what are some other things that we can do that have worked for you. I'm glad you watched this video. If you enjoyed it, hope that you might give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe down below. Until next time, take good care of yourself.